Let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Through the Pages with Dee. Today we are talking about why read Neil Gaiman's American Gods. Well, let me tell you why. This book is a murder mystery, it's a thriller, and it takes you on this epic road trip. It has you hooked from the beginning basically. You have Shadow, who is the main point of view character, and he is due to be released from prison after serving 3 years of a 6-year sentence for GBH. And he's due to be released, and he has a job lined up with his best friend Rob at a gym called Muscle Farm when he gets out. And unfortunately, things take a bit of a turn for the worse there, and he's left basically holding a bus ticket that's been paid for him with nowhere to go except to go home. So he has to go back home, but there's really nothing there for him. No spoilers as yet. So then on the way there, he meets a man. And at this moment in time, we don't find out the man's name, but eventually we do, and he's called Wednesday. He calls himself Wednesday. And he's very influential on Shadow's life from this point on. He's a very large influence. So we travel all over America. We come to a town that's called Lakeview, and every year at Lakeview, a child goes missing at winter. Every single year so far, a child has gone missing at winter. So Shadow becomes embroiled in this kind of affair. He ends up where he joins the search to find this missing girl, and this missing girl he's actually met travelling to somewhere. He's had a little bit of a conversation with her, knows who she is, knows her friend, but it's turned out that now she's missing, and he ends up being embroiled in the search. Shadow also is embroiled in taking orders and demands and errands from gods, hence the name American Gods, who are actually living in America and have been for hundreds and hundreds of years, under everybody's nose. Nobody's actually even aware that these gods are in America, except the gods themselves. And there's a storm coming. There's this huge storm coming. But not only is there this huge storm coming, and I use the word storm, as Neil Gaiman's used it in the book, but there's a storm happening around Shadow himself as well. This book is funny. It's filled with Norse gods, it's filled with voodoo queens and kings, it's got Irish deities, it's got mythical creatures, it's got Egyptian gods. You name it, it is in this book. Among that, you've got this murder mystery thriller going on. And there's hints to me, because last year I spent a lot of time reading James Patterson. So there's hints of James Patterson's technique of how to do thriller. And obviously, if you're into James Patterson, you know what I'm talking about. James Patterson is a fantastic thriller writer. I love James Patterson works. I am one of those, on the James Patterson train, but I love his works, especially Women's Murder Club. And this has hints of that in the telling of the thriller. So why should you read it? Because it's twisty, it's turny, it's got everything that you could possibly think of putting in there. There's the thriller in there. If you're a big fan of murder mysteries or thrillers, yep, this is well worth picking up and reading. It's just a great book. It's a 5-star. It's an absolute 5-star book from me. But there's so much more to it than that. The journey is fascinating. The people that Shadow comes across are fascinating. There's a variety of characters. And you just never know who you're going to meet next. You could meet absolutely anyone or anything. You just never know. So at this point, so that's why I think basically that you should give American Gods a go. It is a fantastic murder mystery thriller with a road trip thrown in there, practically all over America. Like I said, there's twists and turns, and you just really don't know what's ever coming. It's everything's kind of a surprise, but it's just so good. So now, that's 5 minutes of explaining the book in general without giving spoilers away. I may end up now in this part giving out a few spoilers, so I will warn you. I'll try not to as best I can, but I will warn you that I may end up slipping a spoiler in accidentally, so you've been warned. So what we find is that right in the beginning, literally 14 pages in, Shadow gets news that his wife has died, Laura. This guy is meant to leave. This is, say, Wednesday. I can't remember precisely what day it is. But this is, say, Wednesday, and he goes to see the governor of the prison. And he says, you're looking forward to leaving, blah, blah, blah. And then he calls him back the next day, and he says, you're going early. You're leaving early. And Shadow's like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, good news and bad news. You're getting to go early, but your wife's died. She died in a car crash. Sorry about that. So you're going now. Here's your bus ticket. It's been prepaid for by Laura, because Laura works in a travel industry. It's been prepaid for by Laura. You're off home. So off he goes. Shadow is on his way to go home. And then stuff just happens. Stuff just keeps happening. It's just thing after thing after thing. You get introduced to characters such as Wednesday. And then along the story we find out who Wednesday actually is, which he is no small character. He is sort of the main sub-character, I would say, in this book. So you get introduced to who Wednesday is along the way. Then you also meet, I don't know if I can say his name correctly, but Xenobog. Xenobog, again, not who you think he is. These are all very prevalent players in the Storm. You also meet a character called Mr. Nancy, who's great. I love Mr. Nancy. And Mr. Nancy was a shock factor when you find out what it is that he actually is. I didn't expect that, but that he becomes something, and you there's no clues, or at least I don't think there was. If there was, I missed them. But there's no clues as to what Mr. Nancy is. Like I say, unless I missed them, which is highly possible. I miss things. But they are the sort of guys who Shadow's touring with. He's working at this point now for Mr. Wednesday. He's basically his driver, his muscle, he's that kind of thing. So he's now working for Wednesday, and it's just a series of events that unfold. It's crazy. There's so much going on, and there's so much of different places in America brought into this book. And Neil Gaiman, I've got the edition of American Gods where there's a little bit extra in it. So we have, if I just show you here at the back, we've got like an interview with Neil Gaiman in the back of this, and then we've also, because it does say in the beginning that this is an extended version, so I don't know if this is an actually extended version of the original book, but it says it's an extended version. I know nothing of American Gods prior to this, so you guys will have to tell me if this is a different version than you guys have read, or what it is. But so I'll try and find it. So we have an interview. To show you that, we've got interview with Neil Gaiman, and then prior to that we have, just bear with me, we have George R. Martin's writing in there about there's no one quite like Neil Gaiman, which I thought was super cool. And then we have this little section which I as yet haven't read. Just bear with me, because it's quite a decent section, to be quite honest. It's quite a chunk of a book, this, and I wasn't sure if this was... So we've got the continuing story of Shadow, and he's called it Monarch of the Glen. Now, I do know of a series called Monarch of the Glen. I don't presume them two tie in together, because as far as I'm aware, Monarch of the Glen isn't like... I mean, it is set in Scotland, but I don't think it's about gods. I haven't watched it, but I don't think it is. Could be wrong. Then we've got a character called Mad Sweeney. He's great. Didn't think he was going to turn out to be what he is, but he's a great character. He doesn't last, sadly, if that's too much of a spoiler, but he doesn't last in the story. We have the most fantastic turn in the book, which is Low-Key Lysmith. Now, Low-Key Lysmith is Shadow's prison cell partner. If there's a reason to read this book, who Loki Lysmith turns out to be, that's a reason to read this book, and to find out who the actual perpetrator in relation to the children going missing every winter, who that is too. Because I'm usually quite good at picking up on these things. I've read enough thriller over the years. It was my main, like, crime fiction was my main go-to for many, many, many years. And that's where I started again last year, picking up James Patterson and Peter May and, let's see who else. Lisa Jewell, and I picked up loads. I have a completely separate bookcase in the hall, which is all basically my crime, my thriller. I'll maybe show it you one day. It's not very exciting, but maybe I'll show it you if you're interested. So that's where I started last year, was mostly in what I know, my old haunt of books. Horror, thriller, crime. So it's only this January that I've gone to fiction. To fantasy fiction, sorry. It's literally only January where I've gone to that. So everything is brand new to me. Maybe that reflects on the videos that I do, I don't know, because maybe I lack some insight into what I'm reading. They're not getting as many views as I'd like, I'll be honest with you. But I am new and I understand it takes time. It is a little bit sort of, you just wish it was doing better. Because you just want that community and you just want to feel like you're achieving something. But hey, it's for another time, that, isn't it? But yeah, so if those are just 2 points that I could make for you to actually read American Gods by Neil Gaiman, I would say, firstly, to follow... I'm going to make 3. Firstly, just to follow the... what's the word I want? Journey of Shadow, because, okay, that's just... it goes all over the place. So the Journey of Shadow, one reason. Second reason, to find out who Loki Lysmith is, his cellmate. And thirdly, to find out who the perpetrator is, who's taking these children every single year at winter in Lakeview, and basically why he's doing it. Because it's not necessarily for clear-cut reasons as you might think. There's a lot tied to that. It's quite confusing and quite it's not confusing. It's actually really, really interesting. But it's not necessarily just because he's a bad person. There's reasons behind it. So, and also, before I forget to mention, let me just see where I wrote her name down in my notes, because I don't... Essie Trigorn. There's every now and again we go back in history, and we go... I think the first reflection of history is to Essie Trigorn. And Essie Trigorn, it's such a sweet tale of the Piskies in Ireland, and how she believes in the Piskies and leaves little treats outside the back door for them, and she does that to make her life better. And I won't go too into it, because like I said, when you get round to it, I'd love for you to read it. I'd love for you to read American Gods, because it's so good. And if you've watched the series, then maybe you know already, I don't know. But I found the historical parts really interesting. Whether they're true or not, I don't know. Whether there's an element of truth to Essie, I'm not sure. But it was so cute. It was an adorable little story that was thrown. It was like I don't know if it tied. If it did, I missed it. But it was like this adorable little story of its own. And then there was another one about Tutu and her brother. Just bear with me while I find his name. I've got so many notes because there was so much to write about. So much to keep track of, just so I could give a real good insight as to what it's about. With Tutu and Agasu. They are twins from Africa, and that section's about slavery and what slavery brings about, and how they can get separated, and they don't go to very nice people, or they can end up with nice people. And another element of that story which I liked was how Marie Laveau was brought in, who is very well known for voodoo, but the Marie Laveau we're talking about isn't the Marie Laveau that we know. This is Marie Laveau's mum, and it actually turns out that with Tutu she becomes kind of like a voodoo kind of woman, like she knows some stuff basically, and Marie Laveau is learning from her, and she's actually not very good. She's actually not very good in what Watutu's trying to teach her, but Watutu at this point has a different name. Yeah, it's just I don't know what more I can say. It's just really, really good. And in sort of the second chapter, so he's talking about, you know, things hitting you. We get into the second chapter, as far as memory serves me, and we're talking about this prostitute, for want of a better word, who is having sex with men, and in the process of having sex with men, she gets them to praise her and pray to her. And in doing that, they go overboard and they can't help themselves. And it's a sort of like it's kind of like they're under some sort of spell, and they end up praising her in words they wouldn't use. So they're doing this, and then next thing you know, they find themselves being consumed by this prostitute's vagina. They're actually being consumed by it. And this one particular gentleman who is being spoken about in this chapter, before he knows it, he's up to his chin in fufu. Yeah, he's up to his chin in fufu or flour, or however you tuppy, however you word it. You know, when my girls were little, I used to call it the tuppy or the flour. He's up to his chin in tuppy, and there's not a great deal he can do about it. So she then just consumes him. She literally just consumes him. So what we find out is, further on in the book, it goes back to this particular prostitute, and we find out she's the Queen of Sheba. I didn't know anything like, I don't know if that's factually correct, but I didn't know anything like that with regards to the Queen of Sheba. So that was interesting. The Queen of Sheba is half demon in this book, on her dad's side. And she's now, as a prostitute, called Bilquis. And she's a man-eater through her vagina. So if that doesn't make you want to read it or find out more about who on earth are these gods, well, there you go. And that's who they are, and that's what they do. And it's weird and it's quirky, but there's also some heartfelt stuff in there in regards to Shadow's wife, and there's magic in there, and there's this road trip, and we're going all across America, and we even go through the back door to the world of the gods. And then you find out who Shadow actually is. He's not just some guy that Wednesday's picked up off the street. There is actually a story there too as to who Shadow is. It's just so good. And then when something happens to Wednesday, and Shadow, off the back of that, has made somewhat of a promise to Wednesday and has to fulfill this promise. And as he's fulfilling this promise, we go on this whole journey with Shadow through kind of the underworld, if you like, and the people he comes across and the things. We get a bit more divulgence into Shadow's past. It's just brilliant, but it's such an easy read as well. From a prose point of view, it isn't necessarily beautiful, and it isn't necessarily, poetic or anything like that. It's just straightforward written so that anybody can read it at any level. It's so easy to read, and it just basically tells the tale. There's no faff, there's no fuss. It's just a basic tale, but with all these elements in it that make it awesome. It is awesome. It's such a good read. Such a good read. I'm so glad I read it. So glad I read it. And eventually towards the end, Shadow, because he finds out who he is, he too changes. And realises that he's a different person now. So yeah. There's great characters. It's such a good story. It didn't take me very long to fly through it. I think it took me maybe, in total, I'd say maybe 2 days. And it's no... Bearing in mind that, in the back here we've got some added extras. But if we disregard the added extras, I would say... Let's see. We're looking at give me a minute because it's a bit... We're looking at 640 pages, thereabouts. Yeah, 635, so we're looking at that really, without the extras. And there's some extras at the front as well, where it explains that Neil Gaiman's saying that he originally did a certain version of this book, and his editor said to him that he may need to cut it down, trim it down a little bit, which he does, and that's potentially the version that everybody's read. And then two other fellas came to him called Peter this, Peter that, and basically said they'd like to publish a larger version, and that, I believe, is the one that I have. So if you're after this version with the extras in it, that's what it looks like. Closer to you, that's what it looks like. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. A definite must read from me. Really, really good. Just really, really good, and very not sort of as thingy to get into as Robin Hobb or Malazan. It's just more an everyday man book, but with all this mythology and Norse gods and, voodoo gods and voodoo kings and queens and mythological creatures, and it's got all that in it. So it's got massive fantasy elements, but with a lot of normality, a lot of just everyday normality. It's a great read. It's a great read. So that's for today's video. Got all these notes. So yeah, that's today's. Definitely suggest reading American Gods. It's great. Neil Gaiman, I'm going to give more of his works a go. I've seen his film Stardust. Thought that was great. Michelle Pfeiffer. So I may pick that book up and read that. But I read just yesterday. It's a very, very small book. I'm not going to talk about it too much today. I'm going to do that for Friday. I jumped on the bandwagon of KJ Parker. Now, he is good. I really enjoyed that. Not what I was expecting, because it's Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And from me, I get the impression that he's quite well read, especially with all the Greek and etc. So I was a little dubious about what it's going to be like, how it's going to be to read. But it was superb. So that's for Friday. I'm going to talk about The Devil You Know on Friday by KJ Parker. I loved it. So yeah, that's Friday's video. Also, don't forget, guys, there's still the vote out there for what classic book should I read for March. I think the last time I checked, and it's on my Discord, if you go to my Discord, you can also vote on there. I think the last time I checked, it was Frankenstein that was winning, which I'm okay with. If I was going to vote, I would have voted for Frankenstein, I must admit. So yeah, go to my Discord as well, guys. I'll put the link in the description. You can vote there. Otto's done a fantastic job of giving little symbols of how you can vote on there. So please go over there and have a vote. And then the next book we're meant to be starting for March is Delicate Condition, which ties into American Horror Story. I'm not quite sure at this moment that I'm going to stick to that. I may well swap it for T. Kingfisher's duo that I have at the moment. Just because I feel like reading something smaller. Now I've just blazed through that KJ Parker. I enjoyed reading such a small context. So I think I may jump to T. Kingfisher instead. Just swap places basically with Delicate Condition and T. Kingfisher. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do, because I'm really looking forward to T. Kingfisher. It's more horror based, and the way my pattern of reading has gone of late, it's gone fantasy with an edge of horror. So I'd like to go into a bit more of horror, even though Delicate Condition is horror, but just shorter books. So I think I can blaze through those two T. Kingfishers. So I think that's the way I'm going to go. I'm not for sure. I'll clarify that on Friday, and I'll let you know if that's the way I've definitely gone. But nobody's joined for a read along yet, so hopefully it doesn't upset too many. And if you have, let me know. If you have actually decided that you're reading that along with me, please let me know, because without me knowing, I can do that. I can just keep my TBR as it is, but swap and change the pattern of the books as to how I feel like reading them, because I am very much a mood reader. I read when I'm in the mood. So setting a TBR is okay for the books, but as for how I feel when I want to read them is a whole nother thing. So if you are sort of set for reading Delicate Condition, please let me know that, because I'll stick to it then if that's the case. But because nobody's said anything, I don't believe that's the situation. I think I'm going to just jump to Tea Kingfisher and read that instead. So yeah, that's everything for today. Hopefully this will get quite a few views. I hope. And if you did watch to the end, thanks so much. I appreciate that. I really do. I've been looking at my analytics, but I don't think I should really, because it's quite upsetting when you do. But there is no red. Everything's green. So that's a positive. Everything's going up. Everything's green. So that's a positive. But yeah, if you like what you see, please press the like. Please subscribe. If we can get that subscriber up to 50, I've been working it out how I can stream live on my birthday, and I'd really like to do that. I know it's a bit awkward maybe for some in other places because the time difference and what have you, but I'd really like to do that. It's not a momentous birthday. I'm 40 something, getting close to that 50. It's not momentous, but I'd just like to do that. I'd just like my first live, which by subscriber count I can put onto YouTube, to be on my birthday. So if anybody fancies that, please help the subscriptions go up. You know, pass it on to your friends, share, like, do all the ticky-tocky, you know, the blippy-bloppy things. And yeah, if we can just get there for my birthday, that would be great. I'd really appreciate that. We could have a double celebration of 50 subscribers and getting ever closer to that 50. Scary. Yeah, so that's me for today, guys. Please give American Gods a go. Neil Gaiman. That's why you should read it, because it's just got pretty much everything in it. It's fantasy with murder mystery, with thriller, and with an awesome road trip. And off the back of that, I'm Dee. That's me for today. Have a great day. Thanks for watching, and I will see you through the pages.